I am joyous today. I am joyous because we have dodged a giant bullet in the form of Democrat control of the United States of America for an additional 4 years. And every morning I wake up and birds are singing, the sun is shining. I jump out of bed and I do the Trump dance. And I think there's nobody better to share my joy with than Byron York, the chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. You can follow him on the Twitters at Byron York. Byron, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thank you, Kurt. Good to be here. You know, the Trump dance has kind of swept the nation. If you're a football player and score a touchdown now, you have to do the Trump dance.
I love it. Have you ever busted out the Trump dance?
I have to admit that I have not, and that even if I did, I wouldn't have any cameras around.
Yeah, my I was once dancing with my wife, and she said, "Stop joking around," and I said, "I'm not." So that's but anybody could do the Trump dance, and that's the beauty of it. What do you think of yesterday? Katie Phang, Phang, a regime media person, scolded. I think it was Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski for normalizing Donald Trump. We can't normalize him. Do Democrats really think that the guy who beat them, the guy who may actually have a majority of the non-existent unicorn that is the national popular vote, is somehow abnormal? Do they actually feel that way, or?
Well, I think specifically on the Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski thing. I think there were a lot of Democrats, and in this case, I would agree with them, wonder how you can spend months and years calling a man a fascist, talking about a Nazi-like rally that he staged in Madison Square Garden, and just calling him every name in the book, and then just days later decide that it's time to open a dialogue, go to Florida for an audience with him, and then decide that it's time to open a dialogue. So I think a lot of true believers on the left were upset and said so openly after Joe and Mika announced this kind of rapprochement with Trump yesterday morning.
Well, Byron York of the Washington Examiner, the way Trump has been nominating folks, most of the picks, there are some exceptions, have been straight up establishment approved, kind of, for lack of a better word, normal Republican picks. I mean, Marco Rubio at Secretary of State, does it get more normal Republican than that?
No. And as a matter of fact, if you remember back to 2016, first of all, Trump got a much slower start. Mm-hmm. If you look back, he announced his very first cabinet pick on November 18th, which was yesterday. So, I mean, think how much Trump has done now, that he literally had made no announcement up until now in 2016. So he's going much, much faster. And some of these are entirely establishment picks. But obviously, Matt Gaetz is not an establishment pick. Tulsi Gabbard is not an establishment pick. Pete Hegseth is not an establishment pick. So clearly he's thinking outside the box on some of this stuff, and it has driven a lot of the usual suspects nuts.
I think with Pete Hegseth, who I wrote about in Town Hall yesterday, he's an air field grade infantry officer like myself, and there are certain capabilities that we had before the military turned into the woke cesspool of failure that it is right now, that provide a skill set that could be very useful at the Pentagon. And I'm tuned into veteran circles. The Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth nominations have gotten a lot of vet support, which I think will help when he goes to the Senate when they both go to the Senate for confirmation. Matt Gaetz, what are your thoughts on the Matt Gaetz pick? I got to tell you, did not see it. I'm a trial lawyer. Did not see it coming.
Well, I would agree with you on the Hegseth nomination, and I've written something similar to that. I think there's clearly a case for shaking up the military, and to have an outsider do it, who had significant military experience himself. This guy's not some consultant from McKinsey coming in and doing it. He's got real experience. So I agree with you on that. On the Gaetz thing, I have publicly said this is a terrible nomination, and I think it is. And listen, I don't know if Donald Trump can twist enough arms to get it through the Senate, but I do think, there is this report that's been done by the House Ethics Committee. The Speaker of the House does not want it to be released publicly, but I do not see how, in the context of a Senate confirmation hearing, which the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to hold, I do not see how the House can withhold a background report on the nominee for Attorney General from the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, once that happens, of course, it's all going to get public. I do believe it's going to be public. But I don't know what's in it. And I said from the beginning, I don't know what's in this report. I don't know what it says. On the other hand, I do know that Matt Gaetz made common cause with 210 Democrats in the House of Representatives to oust the Republican Speaker of the House. And I found it incredible at the time. I still find it incredible. And, trying to bring down the Republican majority in the House of Representatives is something that a lot of Republicans don't forget.
Well, look, Byron York, there are a lot of personal charges against Matt Gaetz, and there are some intriguing and solid criticisms of the alleged investigation findings that particularly in the Federalist, that raise some questions about whether they are true or not. Let's put those completely aside, even though those will probably take a prominent place should confirmation hearing go forward, because Donald Trump allegedly told the New York Times yesterday, or was reported in the New York Times, that he is not positive that this confirmation is actually going to go forward. I can think of about 10 Republicans who I don't believe will ever vote for Matt Gaetz, and I think there's a institutional incentive on the part of the Senate, which does have an advise and consent responsibility under the Constitution. I can think of 10 senators who I cannot imagine will ever vote for Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would find this to be kind of a useless distraction, because remember, before the Gaetz nomination, there were reports that a lot of political appointees and career people in the Justice Department were terrified that Donald Trump had just been elected president. And I thought that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
They need shaking up in the Department of Justice. They clearly spent 4 years trying to resist and bring down the President of the United States, and they can't do that again. So I thought that was a good thing. And then Trump nominates Matt Gaetz, who's just this whole basket of distractions, and is not a good person to carry out this shakeup at the Department of Justice. So anyway, it's the unfortunate thing about the Gaetz thing, and as I said, I think it's a terrible pick. The unfortunate thing about it is the Department of Justice does need a big shakeup, and there are people that Trump could appoint, like John Ratcliffe, to carry it out.
Well, Byron York of the Washington Examiner, we only have about 30 seconds left. Overall, how do you think this transition is going, particularly in comparison to his previous one?
Yeah, I think it's going better than his previous one, and I think it's going reasonably well. As a matter of fact, he has gotten a lot of nominations out the door. He has a lot more to go. But there's a lot of people to appoint in the executive branch. And this time, he does understand. I think in 2016, he thought, well, you just appoint the secretary of something, and then that cabinet department is kind of under your control. Well, now he realizes you have to go a lot deeper than that to try to actually enact your policy agenda through the executive
Well, you certainly do.